Hello and welcome. I'm Tafara Gadamu. How seriously is the tourism sector affected by the war? And what is being done to keep it alive? My guest today, Seleshi Girma, is the State Minister of Tourism. Everyone, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
It's very interesting. As a background, I'd like to delve into our conversation, the conversation that we had when you were on the show last year, right when the COVID pandemic was at its peak, not necessarily so in Ethiopia, but Ethiopia was negatively affected by that pandemic because you're also talking about countries that generate tourists, right?
Yes.
You're not talking about us on the receiving end, right? But it affected the industry quite tremendously and was quite negative.
Yeah, it really affects much, especially the tourism sector. If you remember, a year ago, we talked about the National Tourism Protocol that we are prepared. Following that, we have been trying to do lots of things. Yet, the tourism sector is negatively affected. Tens of thousands of tourism jobs are already affected, and again, most of the hotels in the regions specifically are still closed, and the travel by air are still limited. Directly or indirectly, the COVID has impacted the sector very much and still unsolved.
Did the efforts that you made help in sort of not reversing per se, but helping streamline your activities in terms of attracting tourists? Because so much has changed since then.
Yes, we have tried much. For example, we were able to disinfect tourist destinations. There was a disinfection campaign. At the same time, we were able to reopen tourism in all over the major touristic spots in the country. And at the same time, we were also able to approach the World Travel and Tourism Council, which is based in the UK. Following our efforts, they have given us a safe travel stamp. I think Ethiopia was the second country from Africa receiving the safe travel stamp. And again, we were able to convince the private sector to open their business establishments and to start promoting tourism. Following it, we have been able to achieve at least to get some tourists. Otherwise, upon our expectation, we couldn't make it.
And then the war started once you started addressing, at least from this side, some of the constraints the sector faced as part, largely because of COVID, the COVID pandemic. Then right after that, the war started, and it also affected the industry, did it not?
Yeah, it is true. Both COVID and the war are a double burden for the tourism sector. Tourism and peace are kind of two sides of the same coin. If there is no peace and if there is insecurity, people won't travel anyhow. So the war affected tourism in many ways. Mainly, as you know, the tourism sector, the core product are the heritages. So some of the heritages were damaged and distracted due to the armed conflict. For example, the El Najash in Tigray, the Church of Madhanalem in the South Gondar, and other parts of the country at the same time were facing some damage. Again, the tourists are using transport like airports and surface transportation. At the same time, some of the airports like the Lalibela airport, the Aksum airport were damaged. As you can imagine, it's like 800 kilometers, 700 kilometers from Addis, and people should get access to fly to visit those places. So some of the transportation infrastructure were damaged, vehicles were stolen, and again, the accommodations, once if tourists are going by surface and want to visit a specific site, again, some of the touristic establishments were damaged, some of the properties were stolen, and again, the employees are no more there, they flee somewhere. So the tourism sector particularly have been affected by losing its heritage, losing its infrastructure, and losing its service.
And the fact that it was in the news, the war was in the news in all directions internationally, it somehow also, made people who intended to travel to Ethiopia to think twice, right?
Yeah, the people will be interested to travel, but listening to this bad news and following the war information, there are frustrations and tension, so they couldn't make it.
So that kind of affected the flow. So what have you done to be able to? So what's going on? I mean, we are entering literally the peak tourism season, right? And it's a holiday season, and many tourists normally quite a figure. I mean, the number of tourists that you find in Ethiopia at this particular time in the years past was really phenomenal.
Yeah, what we are doing is the number is very limited so far, and it's almost nil. So what we are doing is
it's because tourists plan well ahead of time.
They plan ahead of time. But the good thing in the tourism sector is tourism is one of the most vulnerable in this kind of situations and tension. At the same time, tourism is one of the most resilient. So luckily,
how resilient is this now?
Globally, there are enough literatures showing that right after a war is end, tourists will travel and will love to see places where there was a war and how the people are living and how the heritages are being protected and the like. At the same time, after a pandemic, people were restricted to travel and they were all in the house, so they would love to be relaxed. So following this kind of thinking, the literature showed that tourism is very resilient, and we knew that from our experience too. Right after the Ethio-Eritrean war, there was a quick recovery of the tourism sector. Following the global economic recession in 2009-2010, and again the tourism were very quick to recover. So I'm very optimistic in that, and I know tourism is resilient. So we are really doing our best to re-image the country, because we knew that the name Ethiopia is highly attached with war these days, especially in the West. So we are trying to re-image the country using our embassies and ambassadors, consulate generals to try their best and spread the positive image of this country. We are also sending out ministry messages to outbound operators, tour operators who are sending clients to Ethiopia, to be convinced that Ethiopia is a big country, above 1 million square kilometer, and we have not only using the northern touristic circuit, we have 5 touristic zones. One is the north, where actually there is an active war right now, and the other is we have the southern routes where people can enjoy, the lower Omo valleys, Arba Minch and the Sidama, Hawassa, and also we have western part of Ethiopia, all the way, from Ambo, Neqqamt to Gambela National Park, which is one of the biggest national park we have, and people have also an option to visit all the way from Diredoa, Harar to Jigjiga. That's the eastern route we have, and again Addis Ababa and its surroundings too. So being Ethiopia a very large size country, and which is also endowed with rich history, culture and nature, we knew that the historic route is currently in a problem, but we have another 4 touristic circuits that tourists can still enjoy. Even in the historic route itself, people can now travel to Gondar, people can now travel to Bahir Dar, and Lalibela is free now at the same time. So we really want to create this impression and trying to spread the information in the same way.
Are people listening? What is the reaction like? Are you gauging it?
Well, yes and no. Some people are, very hesitant, trying to reconfirm again and confirm. But some others, especially outbound tour operators, have also clients who are adventurous and want to really experience and see things from the ground instead of listening to the news alone. So I'm sure we will be partly achieving it, like 50% will be successful.
The adventure tourists, as you call them, do not necessarily make statistically insignificant. Statistically speaking, they are not that many, right?
That big, yeah, that's very true. That's a very small portion, but the adventurist is one segment of the tourists who will be able to easily come to Ethiopia. That's what I want to say. Otherwise, like you said, unless we go beyond the adventure tourists, we couldn't make many number of tourists that we have planned to bring.
There is a Great Ethiopia Homecoming project, right?
Yes.
And you are involved directly.
Exactly. There is a national task force. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs is chair, and the Tourism Ministry is the deputy chair, and then the Diaspora Agency is the secretary. It's a national call. It's a call and an invite from the Prime Minister, Dr. Abiy Ahmed. So we are engaged in actually making it happen as a responsible ministry to bring these people and show them around.
So where do we stand today? Because this is something that has been launched, if you will, a few weeks back.
Yeah, the actual event will start from January 6, January 7. That means Christmas in Ethiopia. We call it. So they will come from Ethiopian Christmas and will continue coming in the coming months. We are aspiring to get close to 1 million visitors. Those are Ethiopian diaspora. And there will be different purpose for their coming. One would be, the diaspora have been doing lots of things all over the world. They want to support their country. They would love to visit. So one is to support the country and to see places which were really vulnerable and harmed. And the second would be to visit their families and friends. And the other, very small portion, may come for looking into investment options. Now the war is about to be over, so they will look into investment opportunities and the like.
What is the reaction this far? Same question.
I think the reaction for the diaspora is much positive than the foreign tourists. The diaspora have already started booking their flight. The Ethiopian Airlines is every day filling its seats and adding up of additional aircrafts. And there are also a team of diaspora who are reserving charter flights. So the response from the diaspora is immense, and I'm very much excited in that.
So far, in terms of the reactions that you've been talking about, so far, when you mean that they're overbooked and there's so much interest to come to Ethiopia, where is it from, basically? Are you talking Ethiopians from North America or Europe? Where exactly are these people?
It's from all over the world, including, for example, the Middle East, Israel. But most of them are from the North America and Europe.
You've called the Ethiopians to bring along with them at least one Ethiopian should try to convince one non-African to be able to travel to Ethiopia. Is that making any difference?
Yeah, there's an idea that the Ethiopian diaspora or the Ethiopian will also bring their friends, work colleagues, and some other foreigners to accompany them, to come together and show them what's actually happening in this beautiful country. At the same time, they will also bring their families. It's like a national call, whereby we want all Ethiopians to come and see, to support the government, to support their own people. But I'm not sure how many of them are able to convince their friends and bring who are originally from other countries. But I'm sure some of them will achieve it in any case.
But 1 million, at least, 1 million Ethiopians traveling to Ethiopia beginning this new year, right? Or the Ethiopian Christmas, for the next 12 months. That seems to be quite an ambitious project.
Yeah, it's an ambitious one, but the very idea is there are experiences from other countries too. In a scenario of this kind, where there is a national call where your prime minister invites to come home and meet and be with your own people, with your own families, and to support the nation. There is always a strong commitment and desire. So there are experiences of this kind, and I'm also very much convinced in that, looking into the statistics that now the diaspora is booking, and the interest of the diasporas in organizing and mobilizing, globally, to bring them to schedule their flights to come to Ethiopia. So it's all about commitment. We have more than 1 million diaspora living abroad, I think close to 4 or 5 million probably. So we're asking 20% of the diaspora to come. And it's not only this month, it's open in the coming months too. So I'm sure they will make it. And I'm also inviting them to come again.
But as we speak, I mean, when you're targeting, for example, the non-Ethiopian tourists that you've been talking about earlier on, I mean, these are tourists primarily from Europe and North America and so on. But meanwhile, you have active travel advisors to Ethiopia by plenty of countries in the West. Some of them have started removing it, I guess, international organizations like the UN, but almost all of the travel advisors are active, and they put Ethiopia on the red.
Yeah, that's very true.
So how do you think this will happen while those travel advisors are active? Because that's a very serious impact on insurance and so on and so forth.
Yeah, that's, I think, one of the great challenges we have. I've been looking into the different travel bans. There are countries like the US who puts a level 4 travel ban, and others also blanket travel ban, almost restricting all the travel options, including essential and non-essential travels. Yet there are also development in progress on lifting the suspension of travel ban, like the UN did in the past week. So we are very optimistic. Some of the countries will follow the UN in lifting the travel suspension of the travel bans and allow their citizens to travel. But at the same time, from the tourism perspective, we knew that though the government restricts their citizens not to travel, tourists are very rational. Tourists also believe in their own travel experience, and tourists will also ask information from the ground or from the tour operators, not only always listening to the political and the government messages. So I'm sure some of the tourists will make it happen. They did that in Afghanistan. They did that in Libya, in Egypt. So it will also happen in Ethiopia.
Well, how about the new COVID-19 variant, Omicron? Do you think that will be a factor here as far as travel is concerned?
I'm not sure that will have a very negative impact. COVID, the new variant has, of course, a new feature and a new behavior. But related to COVID, I think people, get used to understand keeping the social distances, using mask, and following all these protective measures. They still travel during COVID. So I'm not sure how the new variant will be.
ለጠላት ያለኝ መልእክት ገብተው መልካም ምድሩን የማያውቁ ጦርነቱን የማያውቁ ሰዎች በውር ድንበር እያስፈጁት የትግራይ